Good evening and welcome to Breaking Today News right here on Switch TV. My name is Lincoln Ombogo. Our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. We have a lot prepared for you tonight, but first, the highlights.
President Uhuru Kenyatta and his predecessor Mwai Kibaki mourn former Chief Justice Evans Gicheru as a diligent judge. Kenyans for a second day flock Uhuru Park to celebrate UTAMADUNI Day. What do you know about motorsport racing? Our sports reporter Cedric Oronje highlights the facts, fun and challenges of this silent sport.
We are live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. On YouTube, we are live as Switch TV News. Send in your feedback to our SMS line 111 444 and at Switch TV Kenya and at Lincoln Ombogo. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his predecessor Mwai Kibaki have led the nation in mourning former Chief Justice Evans Gicheru, who passed away earlier today, as a towering legal mind and a highly accomplished judge. In his message of comfort and encouragement to the family, relatives and friends, President Kenyatta said Kenya had lost a great leader whose contribution to the development of the legal sector, especially the independence of the judiciary, has continued to sharpen the country's democracy. On his part, former President Kibaki said that Gicheru was a consummate public servant whose integrity, sense of rectitude and assiduousness were unspersed. Deputy President William Ruto mourned Gicheru as a legal giant who served our country with dedication and distinction. Johnson Evans Gicheru was appointed by President Mwai Kibaki upon his election in 2003. He is the 12th Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya and has served the longest term by any African Chief Justice in Kenya's history from 2003 and finally retiring on 27 February 2011. Moving on, Kenyans have today flocked to Uhuru Park for the second day in a row to celebrate UTAMADUNI Day. Food vendors operating from Uhuru Park have experienced a boom in business this festive season. Namikana Samuel reports.
In 2019, the cabinet approved the renaming of Moi Day to Huduma Day. This was followed by renaming of Boxing Day here in Kenya to UTAMADUNI Day, which is to be celebrated on 26th December every year. This is in line with former President Daniel Arap Moi's desire that the day to be commemorated as a day of service and volunteerism.
Biashara kusema ukweli kulingana na vile hali iko, biashara imerudi chini. Sio kama inakuanga wakati wa sherehe kama mwaka ukiisha. Krismasi inakuanga sherehe kubwa na biashara inakuanga kubwa sana.
UTAMADUNI Day has been set aside to celebrate the country's rich cultural diversity and heritage. Kenyans for the second day have flocked to Uhuru Park here in Nairobi to celebrate the event. Security was beefed up to minimize crime witnessed on Christmas Day.
Mimi kufanya hapa nimefurahi sana. Vile tuko hapa tunasherehekea Christmas ni vizuri sana. Hata kama tuko na msukosuko fulani katika mji wetu, lakini tunoa imani ambapo Mwenyezi Mungu atuondoa hiyo msukosuko taisha.
Kuja huku kwa sababu ya maisha imekuwa ngumu, vile corona imekuwa, sababu bidii tumekuja hapa Uhuru Park ndio tunaweza at least to spend most of the time.
Businessmen and women have enjoyed a boom in business even with the reduced number of people compared to yesterday's celebration. Many claim that the government warning of people not to travel to upcountry has been a blessing in disguise.
Kwa leo ninafurahi, sio kama jana. Jana tulikuwa wengi zaidi kuliko ya leo. Na hope hiyo by tarehe moja tutakuwa zaidi kuliko ya jana. Na nashukuru sana kwa vile watu wako hapa, vile tunafanya biashara kidogo kidogo. Inatusaidia kidogo ile ambapo tunapata, tunashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu.
Containment measures were not followed to the latter, as we saw many people not wearing masks and no social distancing in the park. With the rich culture and diversity, there were no national celebrations to mark this day. As the country marks the UTAMADUNI Day, Kenyans for the second day have flocked here to Uhuru Park to enjoy the Christmas festivities. Namikana Samuel, Switch TV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Namikana Samuel. Elsewhere, the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, KUCO, has today expressed its contentment at the manner in which the Ministry of Health and county governments are handling the current stalemate involving strike health workers over unfavorable working conditions. Lillian Minor files a report.
officers have been on strike for 3 weeks now, citing lack of standard and quality personal protective equipment and comprehensive medical insurance cover, even as healthcare workers continue losing the battle to COVID-19 in the line of duty. The union has today called out the government for frustrating all efforts to resolve the standoff, and in particular with regards to scheduled conciliatory meetings between the union and the government's multi-agency teams, among them officials from the Labour Ministry, the Federation of Kenya Employers, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, and the Council of Governors, which have failed to materialize. This public outrage comes days after doctors called off their strike after coming to an agreement with the Ministry of Health and Labour, and the union has, however, emphasized its unwavering commitment and goodwill towards ensuring its demands have been met in order to assure its members of a safe working environment, and has also welcomed the invitation by the Ministry of Labour Cabinet Secretary Simon Chelugui to resume negotiation talks. For Switch TV, my name is Lillian Maina.
Thank you, Lillian Minor. Moving on, Laikipia County continues to boast of a strategic location and investment hub for corporates. The county governor, MURITHI, foresees a bright future for businesses and corporates setting up their business there. Currently, it's a gateway to other regional counties as well as the central region.
And what you are seeing with NANYUKI is quite a bit of resurgence of economic activity, businesses innovating on their business models. You are seeing NANYUKI taking her rightful place as a logistics and distribution center for this region. As my CEC has informed you, NANYUKI and Laikipia generally is the gateway to the central economic bloc, and that regional bloc is a $27 billion economy. It is bigger than most African countries.
I really hope to make this, our trial effort to come closer to our NANYUKI customer. So please come here and enjoy and have the good experience with us.
Meanwhile, a rebel coalition that has been fighting the government in Central African Republic has confirmed that it was calling off their 3-day ceasefire ahead of a tense general election. Rebel groups launched an offensive a week ago, threatening to march on the capital Bangui in what the government has described as an attempted coup, but their progress has been halted with international help.
The Central African Republic have headed to the polls today with incumbent President Faustin Archange Touadéra on course to win a second term in an impoverished country haunted by violence.
What is happening today? There are very few voters who have the opportunity to travel on Sunday to go vote. What is happening today, despite claims that are here and there, don't think that it's possible for ANE, National Election Authority, to deploy all the material to the 5,400 polling stations.
In the week before voting day, Touadéra accused his predecessor Francois Bozize of plotting a coup. A militia briefly seized the country's fourth biggest town, and Russia and Rwanda sent military personnel to help shore up his government.
We end up with a completely flawed organization, and the organization was already a problem. Now when you add the security concerns and the fact that in every city there are armed groups preventing the process, I think it's wiser to consider postponing the elections.
The CPC was created on 19th December by armed groups who accused Touadéra, the frontrunner of Sunday's election, of trying to rig the vote. Its components are drawn from militia groups that together control 2/3 of the country. Earlier, the government accused Touadéra's ousted predecessor, Francois Bozize, of fomenting a group with the rebels, a charge he denies.
I continue to educate the population so that if there is a vote on Sunday, first I spend the time to make them aware so that they withdraw their voter card. And I tell them that if there is a vote on Sunday, they must vote en masse to drive out Faustin. And so I will set an example.
But a crucial question is that of voter participation. A low turnout will badly dent the credibility of the next president and legislature, which is also being elected. But only a third of the country is controlled by the government, which is politically weak and whose armed forces are chronically under-equipped and poorly trained. Nyakundi Kelvin, Switch TV.
Thank you, Nyakundi Calvin, with our story. We now take a short commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more. Welcome back and thank you for keeping it Switch TV. We are live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. On YouTube, we are live as Switch TV News. Sending your feedback to our SMS line 111 and at Switch TV Kenya and at Lincoln Wumbogo. Challenges faced by visually impaired learners are broad. Most of them limit their dreams to attain education in higher learning institutions. Hadia Mosiwa narrates the story of a visually impaired journalist who says his disability has limited him from numerous opportunities in the already strained job market.
The shift from traditional journalism to digital journalism has reinvented the journalism career.
Being a journalist takes not only talent but also hard work, and still finding a job is a hurdle, especially in a job market filled with thousands of talented and trained journalists. Let's do this.
Violence is a daily
economic recovery in the country is the use of policymakers and implementers who will pinpoint the gaps in the economy to ensure that the large...
Making the struggle more challenging than before. It is believed that all it takes to be a good journalist is incredible talent, passion and skills. This has been the defining factor for many. But for Moses, the journey has been rocky. In 2016, Moses lost his sight and his job at the same time after an eye surgery went wrong.
I had an eye condition called glaucoma from way back, but it was discovered a bit late. And by the time it was being discovered that it was actually glaucoma, I had already lost my right eye. So when we went to the doctors, they examined and noticed that the right eye was now affecting the left. They decided, you know what, it's best if we do a procedure on the left and try and save it before it gets damaged as well. So I accepted. But in the course of the procedure, the doctor scarred my retina, and I ended up losing my sight.
With limited options, he decided to follow a path he has always loved. And his journey revealed that being visually impaired limits him to important life opportunities.
Because I had searched for college and a university, knocked on a whole lot of doors, but I couldn't get in. Every time I walked into a college, they could just tell me, the moment they notice I'm using a white cane, they tell me, no, we don't have facilities for persons with disability, and we cannot host you here.
But his struggle was not in vain. His dream finally came true, and he narrates his first day at the Kenya Institute of Professional Studies, KIPS, where his journalism career finally began.
It was amazing, because and at the same time, I was full of excitement and full of anxiety, because this is the first time you get into the studio, and I was basically taught practicals through and through. So it's the first time you're sitting in front of the mic and you're told, ongea, to say anything. And you're like, man, I'm blank.
Challenges of unemployment are adverse in a job market with scarce opportunities, but flooded with trained professionals. And being visually impaired, Moses says his challenges are magnified.
When someone who sasa msiako sawa wakati anatafuta job, I have to work doubly hard to get that job as well. And then there's still this stereotype yati msi yako na impairment haezi fanya kitu fulani. I usually walk into some place, mtu aniangalia anaona niko na cane, akisikia ati nimekuja appointment, anashangaa. I've been asked, we, tukusaidie na nini huku atupatianangi nini, atukupatianangi pesa. And I always act dumb. Pesa? Mkona do.
Despite the Disability Act 2003 laying down a clear guideline for institutions to follow in order to have a friendly environment for persons living with disabilities, Acting Director, Kenya Society for the Blind Solomon Bukhala says most learning institutions have failed to provide opportunities for visually impaired students. His sentiments express the need for more inclusivity in learning institutions in an effort to narrow the gap existing between visually impaired learners and those without disabilities.
And that is why teaching a blind person or a person who has visual impairment is more difficult at the lower level. At the higher level, there are equipments they can use, and they can also be guided. They can read. They can be facilitated to have appropriate material. They can access material on the internet. They can write using their laptops, so long as we make their laptops more inclusive, to have a software that will a screen reader that will read and they can use. We do purchase these softwares for all institutions that want to purchase. And we train both those who have lost sight and those who are even working in these institutions to know how to work with the persons with the visual impairment. The only thing is that institutions are not opening up. They should open up. They should accept most learners and then come to us as Kenya Society for the Blind and tell us, what can we do?
Moses is still hopeful that someday his dream of practicing journalism will come to reality.
And you see, at the end of the day, the year ends, nothing has been done. No student with visual impairment has been admitted, and while there are many who have passed outside there. So what is happening is that acceptance. The institution should understand it is there for human beings. And one thing, those with the disabilities, they are just like any one of us. The only thing, they have lost sight. But since they have now reached a level that they have done, they can write, they can read, they can listen, yes, then we should involve them. And where we cannot do anything, we consult. Come to the society. What can we do with such? And we should be ready to set some funds aside. In fact, the government should fund the training institutions. Yes, mass communication should be funded to cater for students with disabilities. We should have more funds. We understand some of this equipment is expensive. But you see, there's more money in this country for training. When it comes to infrastructure, improving infrastructure of learners, people with disabilities should be taken in consideration.
Being a journalist takes not only talent but also hard work. And still, securing a job is a hurdle, especially in a job market filled with thousands of talented and trained journalists. For Moses, being visually impaired makes his dream of securing a job as a journalist tougher than usual. Reporting for Switch TV, I'm Hadia Mwasiwa.
Thank you, Hadia Mosiwa. The creators of a lab-grown chicken meat say it can help reduce the environmental damage involved in human food production after it made a historic debut at a Singapore restaurant Saturday in a culinary first. Joy Marine with his story.
Lab-grown chicken meat made a historic debut at a Singapore restaurant Saturday in a culinary first that its creators said could help reduce the environmental damage involved in human food production.
We no longer have to, clear cut forests to make land for farms. We don't have to, grow the food to feed the chickens. We don't have to water the chickens. We don't have to worry about the waste that we receive from the chickens. And we're just, growing pure clean meat. So we have no waste, and the footprint is so much smaller. We could, if we took a building, a building this size and filled it with 20,000 liter bioreactors, we could feed Asia.
US startup Eat just said earlier this month that its product had been approved for sale in the city-state as an ingredient in chicken nuggets after Singapore became the first country to allow the sale of meat created without slaughtering any animals.
I believe that we are at the forefront of something that is going to fundamentally change the way we grow our food and feed ourselves. And I think it's we're going to look back at this particular time in history and we're going to say, yeah, that was the beginning of something incredibly special, and look where we are now. So with this product, my expectation was actually, 50%. And when I tasted it on Saturday, it by far exceeded my expectation. And I would wager that in a blind taste testing, I wouldn't know the difference. The way it was cooked, the way it was served, I would have, if you told me that was, a chicken, I would have wholeheartedly believed it and enjoyed it. When you get this generation behind that kind of a movement, I think it's unstoppable. I mean, that's the beauty of kids today, is they have incredibly strong values.
Entrepreneur Mark Nicholson, who founded 1880, described serving cultured meat as a revolutionary step towards solving climate change and creating the opportunity to feed the world without overwhelming the planet.
I believe that we are at the forefront of something that is going to fundamentally change the way we grow our food and feed ourselves. And I think it's we're going to look back at this particular time in history and we're going to say, yeah, that was the beginning of something incredibly special, and look where we are now.
Animals in an environmental threat as cattle produce the potent greenhouse gas methane, while logging to create pastures that destroys natural barriers against climate change.
This product, my expectation was actually, 50%. And when I tasted it on Saturday, it by far exceeded my expectation. And I would wager that in a blind taste testing, I wouldn't know the difference. The way it was cooked, the way it was served, I would have, if you told me that was, a a chicken, I would have wholeheartedly believed it. And
Demand for sustainable meat alternatives is rising due to growing concerns from consumers about the environment and animal welfare, but other products on the market are plant-based.
when you get this generation behind that kind of a movement, I think it's unstoppable. I mean, that's the beauty of kids today, is they have incredibly strong values.
Meat consumption is projected to increase more than 70% by 2050, and lab-grown alternatives have a role to play in ensuring a secure food supply, the company said. There were concerns that lab-grown varieties will be too expensive, but a spokesman for it just said that the company had made considerable progress in lowering the cost. For Switch TV News, my name is Joy Maureen.
Thank you, Joy Marine, for that story. Over the years, motorsport racing has not been recognized in Kenya, but many bikers have opted to defy our laws and pick up the silent sport. Our reporter Cedric Oronja spent time with Kennedy Murete, a lawyer by profession who is also a speed bike racer.
When one talks of MotoGP, the common names that pop up as usual suspects are Valentino Rossi, Giacomo Agostino, Marc Marquez and Mick Dohan, who are currently top 4 MotoGP riders in the world rankings. For Kenyans, the sport has not been recognized by many but has gained popularity due to its uniqueness and fierce character portrayed by the riders. Despite holding this trait, the art has been barred with a lot of challenges, including lack of proper resources and racetracks in the country. Kennedy Murete is a certified Kenyan lawyer who trades his art by riding to and from courthouses. Even though the affair isn't rosy, the law rider is determined to keep going, narrating that it takes skill to perfect the art.
Training on motorcycles is coming to the track, learning your mistakes and finding a way of getting rid of them one mistake at a time. That takes a lot of track time, that takes a lot of repetition, and doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results until you get them.
In Kenya, the average death toll of motorcycle riders has over the years increased, with data collected by the National Transport and Safety Authority (NTSA). The curve clearly depicts the need to invest highly in motorcycle safety.
Racing is too dangerous and that you cannot do it without falling. But we have been able to prove that with a lot of practice and with a lot of consistency in terms of putting in time behind the seat, you can actually get to a place where you are able to say you can ride a bike without the fear of falling or without even falling at all. For example, I've been riding since the year 2017, and during that time I've only had 2 falls on the bike. One was at 5 kilometers per hour at the corner at the end of this track, and that is because the track was still new, part of the track came off. I got into a corner at a place where nobody else was getting in, very sharp. And then the part of the tarmac, came off and I fell. The other one is on tarmac, and I don't have injuries on myself. I don't have a single scratch from riding a bike. Despite having covered the most distance in the last 3 years, I've covered about 120,000 kilometers per hour. Oh, 127,000 kilometers on the road.
Wakili has also mentored and nurtured young talent in the industry, having groomed young tech riders despite him not being a rider for long.
In 2016, that is when the races started. We started racing on small bikes. I was performing on Apache 180cc, and we started on a track called TGRV at Maimahio.
As they ride and drift the speed bikes, not forgetting the wheelies, it is evident that practice is a key factor to them.
The racing when I was 14 years old, that was enduro and motocross at Nakuru there. But on the new speed bikes, I started racing when I was in 2016. That's when I started racing on super bikes till now.
Evans Mwangi, who is also known as Acid Boy, who was grown under the wings of Murete, recalls his encounter in South Africa following a competition that he won despite him coming in short-handed.
South Africa, the challenge, they were very many. When I got there, nilipata I was competing. I was supposed to compete with 1000cc bike, but when I go on the track, I got 1000cc zote zimeshukuliwa, so the one enye ilikuwa imebaki ni 600cc, so hiyo ndo nilibidi nikimbie naye, because all of the bikes with some guys from many countries wamekuja wamechukua bike zote, so nilipatiwa bike nzee ilikuwa 600cc, but si lose hope. Nisema hiyo yenye mmenipatia ndo nitawakilisha naye. So nili make sure my qualifying nimefanya time lap mzuri, so at least on the lineup pale kwa kwanza wameniweka position poa, so that nikitoka nitatoka poa na nitatoka at speed, so venye nitaweza kukalia watu 1000cc.
Now with the adrenaline, fear factor, and of course determination that comes into this track, one can tell for a fact, for you to be a biker, it takes the heart, courage, and discipline. Cedric Oronje, Switch TV.
That story by Cedric Oronje wraps up our news broadcast tonight. Many thanks for watching. My name is Lincoln Ombogo. Our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Good evening.